Hey guys, I wanted to make a video showcasing this build. It's probably one of the most fun builds I've ever played, and it's using a new tech that got introduced this league, and I'm really enjoying this build so far, and it's one of the cheapest Sparks has ever been, because you can use the classic poison archetype to make a build cheaper than usual, because you don't need to invest in as many sources of damage as you normally would. Um, so the way this build works, and the reason that it works, is we're using the combination of an annoyant, so Vine Spark Cordial, which makes us inflict grasping vines on hit to enemies with fewer than 8 grasping vines, as long as we have a life flask on. So we have permanent life flask on because we are a Pathfinder, and we have Master Surgeon. So our life flask can just always be on. We regen the life flask through Tides of Time. You can see my life flask is full by the time it is off cooldown. So we're always inflicting these grasping vines on hit. We just have to make sure we hit our life flask every 8 seconds or so. And then the boots, what they do is when we have grasping vines, we have this line on the boots that says all damage inflicts poison against enemies afflicted by at least 3 grasping vines. So this line is super powerful because it doesn't say all damage can poison, it says all damage inflicts poison. So what that means is typically on a poison build, you need to invest a ton into this line, which is 10% chance to inflict poison, chance to inflict poison everywhere, because you would want to get to 100% so all your damage was inflicting poison. There's a couple ways to do that, mainly through using things like Herald of Agony and investing points on your tree. But by running this annoyant plus these boots, we are completely circumventing the need for chance to poison, and it makes it so we can make a really strong character at low investment. If you look at my gear, you can get relatively replicable pieces without even crafting it yourself. You could probably get every piece on this build pretty much for somewhere around 200 div. There are some ways you can save a lot of cost. So my build currently is around 200 div, but if you were wanting to save cost, I'll go over it really quickly, and you could make this build for easily 50 div or less. Okay, so how do you save cost? Well, first of all, buying a quiver would be expensive, so you want to craft it yourself. Crafting this is not that hard. You fracture a base. You could also buy a base. Projectile speed fractures are usually a little bit cheaper than projectiles pierce fractures, because the projectile pierce fractures are necessary for multiple different Widow Hail builds, whereas the projectile speed fracture is more usable for our build because our quiver is a little bit easier to craft than other versions of this quiver. So after you get a fractured base through fracturing yourself or buying one, all you have to do is just essence spam until you hit a high max life. You can see I hit tier 1 and then made sure it was divined, because this one quiver gives us a ton of health. You can see 3400 to 4300, so one quiver gives me 700 health. So you want to get the life, and then you'll have the prefix of the essence. The projectiles pierce 2 targets. You'll have the life, and then you're gonna do the other prefix by crafting suffixes cannot be changed and veiled chaos orbing, and then you can get this hybrid damage as your last mod. And then after that, it's as simple as prefixes cannot be changed, reforge chaos, or if you don't have projectile speed on it, prefixes cannot be changed, reforge speed, until you hit high projectile speed. But if you have fractured projectile speed, it's really easy, because all you need to do is reforge chaos until you have an acceptable tier of chaos resistance. I could make this better very easily by just doing it a couple more times. I just don't want to fill the suffixes and have to start over, and my build functions as is, so I don't really need to improve this quiver. So I think the quiver, if you do it that way, should cost somewhere between like 10 to 30 divines, depending on if you're fracturing it yourself or if you can find a cheap base, and depending on how good you actually want it. Because if you're settling for tier 2 life, if you're settling for like low tier chaos res, this quiver becomes, you know, way cheaper. If you did the purity of element change that I'm gonna mention, then you can do a lot of things to make this build a lot cheaper. But first let me go through the rest of the pieces really quick. The chest, there are 3 corrupts you can get. You can get +2 duration, +2 projectile, or +1 socketed gems. All of them are significant damage boost. You could even get 50% increased damage. That's a significant damage boost. If you got any of these, it would be doable. Now that there's a black market auction house or whatever, it's a lot easier to 6-link corrupted items. So, you know, as long as you can find one that's corrupted that has decent less fizz and chaos damage taken while sane, you've got a pretty easy item. This one that I bought was 3 divs, I think, and then I 6-linked it, so a couple more div for buying the Val Orbs and the Jewelers and the Fusings. But really not that expensive. You could run non-corrupted, and you don't lose that much damage. It's not a big deal. So then the rest of the build sort of should be cheap. Defiance of Destiny is really cheap now because it got nerfed. These rings are really good, but a really good way to save money on this build would be to change, as you can see in the POV, if you changed Haste right now is only giving us 3 mil DPS to our poison. So if we changed Haste to Purity of Elements, our reservation still works on a 3 Enlighten. But now we have ailment immunity, we have a lot more resistances, and what that will do is that'll make it so we don't need to run rings with high resistances. All we would need is a little bit of chaos res so that we're still chaos capped. And then you can just use your rings to make sure that you have this life on hit with spells on one of your rings with max life. And then with the other ring, you can just get like cast speed and life and maybe crafted hybrid damage like this. And you can pretty much get way lower tier reses because you have Purity of Elements. Tides of Time is like 4 div if you have max life charge, life flask charge, and max utility flask gain. So that's a decent investment. On the tree, in the POB I link, it has Rational Doctrine in it. But Rational Doctrine is only there because I'm running Haste. If I was running Purity of Elements, I wouldn't need this because I wouldn't need Conk Ground to be permanently up. Right now I'm using it to always have Concentrated Ground, and I'm also using the Profane Ground just, you know, because it's not that hard to balance your stats. So this is a little bit of a damage boost, and it gives us permanent Conk Ground. And permanent Conk Ground is nice because with Militant Faith, you can actually get permanent ailment immunity on one of your nodes. And you actually have options. You don't have to have it on this node. You could have it on this node, for example, because of this Thread of Hope. Or you could have it on this node. So there's multiple different variations that have it on one of these nodes. So it's not that hard to find. You just have to go looking a little bit. And if you want to find that with elemental damage and resistances, it might be kind of hard to find one of those. It's not expensive, it's just, you know, a process to look for them, even with the regexes that exist to look for Militant Faiths. So if you're wanting to save money and not like worry about finding a great Militant Faith, and you're not wanting to worry about using a Rational Doctrine, just run a regular Militant Faith that doesn't kill any of the nodes, and run a Purity of Elements instead of a Haste, and that'll save you a ton of money. Another way you can save a ton of money is through dropping Progenesis. You don't need Progenesis for this build. To do Sim 15 Deathless consistently, it definitely is necessary. You will die if you're just running an Amethyst Flask here, but it's still doable, and I actually have done Sim 15s without this flask. It's just more difficult and you end up dying. And so I would say Progenesis should be one of your earlier upgrades as you get more divines. Otherwise, the rest of the tree is probably only like, I don't know, 30 divines or so. And again, you can save costs here. You can use Purity of Elements, still have high res rings, and then get worse Thread of Hopes if you want. My Thread of Hopes are both minus 10% right now, so they're the best possible. But if you got them to be like minus 15, they'd be significantly less expensive, and you would be able to still run that easily with Purity of Elements. Even without Purity of Elements right now, I'm like far over res capped because I want to be able to run altars very easily. So without Purity of Elements, I'm super over res cap. So with Purity of Elements, I think the res would be super easy to solve. Other than that, you know, my build is basically as good as I want it. The only things that I foresee myself upgrading in the future is I foresee myself maybe trying a Mage Blood version of this build. Otherwise, it's just like double corrupts that I get, and that's pretty much it. So I really recommend this build. I hope you enjoy the showcase after this. I'll link the POB in the description. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you try the build and enjoy it. Peace out.